CatDog is a show that I remember watching a lot growing up, but I remember nothing about it. And I'm trying to watch the first episode of every show I grew up with, so I figured there's no time like the present for watching the first episode. Well, I watched the first segment of the first episode, which is called Dog Gone, and honestly, it's not very good. The pacing of the narrative isn't great, it isn't fun, it isn't engaging. It has a nice message, and the animation style is nice, but the story is just a little poorly written for my liking. If you're unaware, and I'm sure you can tell if you're looking at the thumbnail for this or the image on the screen, but Cat Dog, they're actually two characters, and they are joined at the butt, basically. I mean, they technically don't have a butt. They have two heads instead, and we have one a cat and one a dog, and they have their own individual personalities. They just happen to be joined together. And in this first segment, Cat is fed up of constantly being around Dog, and some alone time is necessary. But actually, we have a message that being alone constantly and doing things alone might not be all it's cracked up to be. Now, I am watching this as somebody who actually quite frequently does things alone. I'm quite happy to, for example, go on holiday by myself because I have an issue with making the most of every second and I do a lot of running around and it's not very relaxing to most people. So for me, probably better that I do go on holiday alone most of the time. But in general, there are benefits to being around people, and if you spend too much time alone, it can have negative mental health effects. Now, I'm not saying the cartoon goes that deeply into it, but if you want to look at it with that depth, you might be able to. But honestly, the pacing is what makes this terrible. I'd say the cartoon is about 10 minutes, give or take, and it takes over half of that time to get to the point of Cat wanting to be alone. I know it's the first episode, but the setting up didn't really give us any information that was useful or necessary to proceed with the narrative. Had they got to the point sooner, maybe it would have been better, but I just think the pacing is really poorly done, and what Cat does technically alone, I won't spoil it by saying how Cat gets some alone time. I don't want to give it away. I did think that was kind of clever. That part of it, yeah, it worked quite well, but the rest of it was just not very well done. But the characters are actually quite likable, quite interesting, and the animation is pretty nice. I quite like the animation. And the theme song, I don't know when I last listened to that theme song, but the nostalgia that came with that was beautiful. I still couldn't remember anything specific. The episode didn't reignite any memories that I'd maybe forgotten. But the theme did stick with me, and it was beautiful to listen to. So it's not the strongest start. On the one hand, it's an okay introduction to the characters because we get a sense of their personality, but at the same time, we don't really know that much about them. And I'm not necessarily expecting us to learn everything in the first segment, but I'm trying to find a positive since the narrative isn't very great. Unfortunately, there just aren't any. However, the show seemed to do really well. I remember liking it, so maybe this is just a weak beginning and it progresses from here. It wasn't as joyful as I'd hoped, but the nostalgia was still pretty great. And if you grew up watching CatDog but you don't remember it, like me, then I'd say check out Doggone or any other episode, I guess, that takes your fancy, because the nostalgia is pretty sweet, even if this introduction wasn't that great.